Hi Simon, great to have you on board one of these fireside chats. I've wanted Iris on here for a long time because I think you're trying to do things a little bit different than everybody else.
Oh, well, it's absolutely wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us on, Nick. And I think we are trying to do things a little bit differently. Yes, maybe not taking quite the same approach as everyone else. Love to talk to you about it. And yeah, I have watched a number of these that you've done with others, so I feel genuinely very honoured to be on here. So thank you very much.
I know the honor is definitely ours, and I think everybody who's going to listen is going to find it really interesting to see because it's interesting how different businesses work. But I think probably where I want to start from because it's now, well, apart from 4 months, it's your 3 year anniversary effectively. So you've
It
been
is.
at Iris for about 3 years, and it'd be really interesting to understand because obviously there are lots of businesses have watched this, and it'd be really interesting to understand that at the beginning of those 3 years and the vision and the strategy that you wanted to take, has it fulfilled, have you fulfilled that vision, do you think, or do you think you've had to change it based on market dynamics? How much has changed in the market that's influenced your strategy, maybe more your strategy than your vision?
The change that's gone on in the sector in the last 3 years has been phenomenal. And I think we probably have changed our strategy as a result of that. But if we wind back 3 years when I joined, we were just sort of dealing with the remnants of COVID, in fact, still sort of partly lockdowns. Pupils had been out of the classroom for way too long. And schools, as a result, everyone had been out of school, hadn't they? Everyone had been out of workplaces, and the challenges of technology had been, roundly highlighted, I think, or the technology that schools were using. So, subsequent to that, I think we've seen a huge shift to cloud and cloud technology and the ability to the benefits that come from that, be it video tools like this or the ability to access data remotely within schools. I think that whole shift to cloud has been a legacy of COVID, and I think a hugely positive one. We have been fortunate in that our portfolio was already predominantly cloud based, but I think we were very much a sort of best in class individual components at the time, and we probably hadn't fully understood the opportunity to integrate all of those things. So I think probably the very general answer to your question is we've really identified the ability to integrate cloud products and share data amongst those products, and then be able to provide insight into schools and make the working day more efficient from some of the tools that have been adopted. So that's probably been our main shift in strategy. Also, there's been huge developments in, I'm sure these themes are going to come up as well, but developments in AI and other technologies which will form part of our strategy going forward, and have probably made us change direction very slightly as well.
But your portfolio is big. The whole sort of, I suppose, the ethos on Iris, I'm guessing, and definitely correct me, is that very much a sort of we deliver sort of best of breed sort of solutions, and some of those have been acquired, some of them may have been developed, but it's a big portfolio into the education sector. And some of those you bought, like say, ISAMs you bought from the independent sector, independent international sector, and tried and adapted that product to move into the maintained sector. How do you think those things have gone? Was it hard to bring those all together to give out a single proposition? How has that vision or strategy,
Yeah,
sort of happened over the last 3 years?
yeah.
What's your purpose?
Iris will be able to support you with market leading technology. As you say, we bought some of that stuff. Equally, we spend a huge amount on developing. So we buy it, we understand how that fits with the rest of the portfolio, as I've talked about earlier, and we then try and work out how those bits, when they are plugged together, can help educators improve student outcomes, and that can be saving time, giving better insights into data, reducing cost, the plethora of things that schools get challenged with. That's ultimately what's driving us. But to your point about ISAM specifically, I mean, we bought what was an absolutely brilliant product that has continued to be hugely dominant in the independent sector. We were really fortunate to have such a great team to help also shape that for the state sector as well. We've made great inroads into the state sector as well. So we've bought brilliant things, and I hope the teams and customers would agree that we've continued that investment and continued to sort of build on them and hopefully make them even better and realize even better benefits for schools.
And obviously, Iris Financials is one of those products that initially, was adopted by, I think at one point, at least 75% of academies. And do you see that as, or do you see that as like almost your Trojan horse for all the other solutions, or do you not see that as the case anymore, or was that part of the strategy and now changed, or what, or do you think you have to adapt that position because ultimately, depending on what Matt's needs are?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't use the phrase Trojan horse. I would probably say keystone product, maybe,
Okay.
from a positive perspective. But we're hugely fortunate that the market adopted Iris Financials. Well, not fortunate. It is an amazing product. The features that it helps multi-academy trusts, or the features it has that help multi-trusts do what they need to do, has made it really, really fit for purpose. And we take that responsibility really seriously. So we've continued to invest in that. We've launched, I think, some really exciting innovations, things like our integration with Amazon, on the theme of saving schools time. It was really clear from our customers how much time they were spending reconciling invoices from all the little bits that got purchased on Amazon. So we went out to Amazon, we've agreed a unique integration. All of that stuff flows through into Iris Financials, is reconciled, saves a huge amount of time in the school. So we feel like responsibilities of having a market-leading product really seriously. But to your point, what we've seen then is how you build off that product and how you can integrate that with other systems, be it forecasting, be it payments modules. All of these things work together in a school. And if those products don't talk to each other, you are asking the school to spend way more time double keying things or trying to reconcile all the payments that they might have got from students or parents into a finance system. And that's just time that, administrators and finance teams in a MAT or just, they don't need to do that, right? Technology exists to be able to make those things better. That's what we're all about. And that's what we think our portfolio can help deliver.
Okay. And do you think one of the it's not a case of do you think was one of your strategies very much so when you bought iSams, was it also to enable yourself to reach out to a wider market in the sense of international markets and other independent sector, or are you still heavily focused on the sort of I suppose the English UK market, because that's obviously where lots of your products are where the need is, so in maths and academies, or is that's now expanding out, like say to international and
I mean, when we bought iSams, it already had a pretty good international footprint. But I'm incredibly pleased or incredibly proud of the fact that more than 50% of iSams revenues are generated overseas now. So it has grown dramatically as a result of, well, one, it's by far the best solution for independent and fee-paying schools. It has been built absolutely with those schools in mind. So the nuances that go on in independent schools, iSams caters brilliantly for. And it's grown really quickly overseas. And we are a global business. Iris is a global business. We are absolutely going to continue to support that. And so we've seen that growth go really well. We have predominantly followed the UK curriculum, by its very nature. So our footprint has ended up in Middle East, Asia, where there's lots of UK and international baccalaureate schools, because we support IB as well. But we are fortunate to count a number of the big school groups as our customers, and they were talking to us about US curriculum and whether we could shape iSams to be able to support the US curriculum. So I'm really pleased. I think this is the first time we've mentioned this to the market, but we're going to be supporting US curriculum from the end of September onwards in iSams. Early days, because it's US curriculum is a significant challenge in itself with all the GPA calculations and all the rest of it. But we've spent a long time building that capability, and we've had it verified by a number of schools who are already operating on US curriculum. So if that gives you a sense of our ambition for where iSams is going, we see ourselves operating in curriculums and geographies outside of just those normal UK ones where we've been so strong to date.
Oh man, amazing. And I suppose my question also is more along the lines of, are you looking to resell some of your other products like RS Financials into those markets as well? So, to give out a full portfolio to them, or do you feel that's not a necessity in those other
That's
markets?
yeah, John, that's been a topic of discussion for many hours internally. And Iris Financials has a bunch of features which make it very suitable for the UK market, but not necessarily for the international market. We have a product called iFinance, which is a cloud finance product, which is integrated with iSAMS, and we sell that internationally because it's probably a thinner feature set, because actually some of those features aren't needed internationally, but it's fully integrated with iSAMS, and we sell that globally as well. We're also looking very carefully at compliance, the compliance requirements on many independent schools, be it asset tracking or building maintenance, or all the things that schools have to do in order to be safe and regulatory compliant. They're the same. So we've seen quite a lot of success in our compliance modules being overseas. And we're looking really carefully at HR and payroll, which I know we'll talk again, I'm sure, about in a minute. But having HR suitable for overseas territories is something that our customers are asking us a lot, considerably about. We've got a lot of focus on HR in the UK at the moment. We've seen huge demand from customers for the HR products that we've got in the UK. So we've just got to shift our resources to go international as well. But absolutely, to your point, we will be looking to sell that full portfolio. And I think you said at the outset that we do things slightly differently. Being able to come to market with a fully integrated finance, MIS, HR, and even potentially international payroll offering that has been built from the ground up for schools, I think that's hugely powerful and genuinely helps us realize the ambition that we're looking for, which is to help educators improve life chances, because this is a proper system with grown-up tools that help schools run as efficiently as they can be.
Like it. So probably looking at your vision, and if I was going to place or summarize your strategy, then it's very much about adapting. It sounds like you adapt and you move quickly, and dependent on the sort of needs of the different markets you're playing in the sense of international, you've adapted to that. You've again soon with the UK as well. So it sounds like you're massively ambitious would be part of your strategy, and adaptation would be the other thing, I think, in the sense of how you're going to meet that ambition. So in that sort of sense, sorry, I spoke over you then.
No, I was going to say, I think, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And I think probably one of the things I didn't mention, if I went back from 3 years, we had a pretty full portfolio. The bit we were missing was HR and payroll for education. We plugged that on probably 18, 24 months ago. And exactly to your point, we've been really ambitious in building out that capability. And I think that has given us the full back office, which, which as I say, is exciting, for the conversations we're having with customers.
Yeah, I was going to say, so ultimately, I think if I was going to look at sort of MATs in general and their needs, so I think first of all, there was a very strong need to look at for the finance system. So that seemed to be their first priority when they moved away from the local authority is, we now need probably a stronger finance system than what we had underneath the sort of local authority. Then they've sort of moved, and there seems to be there's obviously a massive churn in MIS. So we can all just look at Josh Perry's sort of analysis, and you can see
as we all do on a regular basis. Yes, yeah.
And basically, the market's now very diverse and definitely much more fragmented than it's ever been. But what I get a sense of at the moment is most mats I talk to, they sort of almost, it's like, well, we've almost done that now. It's sort of now HR. It seems to be there's a lot of noise about now we need a really strong HR and potentially payroll systems.
Yeah.
And that seems like if you're saying that you got that back 4 years ago, so you obviously had a good insight into where the market was going already, or do you think that was just because you wanted a complete solution?
No, I mean, Iris as a group is accountancy. We have a big accountancy division, we have a big HR and payroll division, and we have an education business. The HR and payroll division of Iris pays about 1/5 of the UK's workforce through our payroll system. So I think it's fair to say we've got a little bit of experience in that. And I think it was clear to us when we started looking at the education market that, I say nothing's clear at the time, but the bet we made was exactly to your point. There was a point in the future where schools were going to go, how do we manage our workforce most effectively? I mean, if you look at the challenges that MATs are facing, almost every leadership team will say recruitment, staff retention, they're the biggest challenges they got. And having the right tools in place is the cornerstone of being able to get some of that stuff right. And as you say, a lot of focus was rightly on finance and MIS, and we saw those churns in the market. But the conversations we've been having for the last 18, 24 months have been predominantly about HR and payroll. And we acquired a brilliant business called Every in late or early 22. They had an HR product, and we looked at the market really carefully to see which was the best. And we were really clear that they had the foundations for being absolutely brilliant. And we've put a huge amount of innovation and development into that product since. We have also coupled it together with a cloud-based payroll engine, which again is built for education alone. And all of that was released. Its most latest iteration was released just a month ago. So I mean, this is really being invested in and up to date. And we've seen absolute phenomenal take up from that from customers in terms of helping them understand their workforce, understand how they attract properly, because we have recruitment and attraction and kind of staff management within that, all the way through to how do you manage students and also how do you manage staff in within the school day, all the way through to payroll and how you manage the sort of entire staff within the school. And I think that let's say that's been hugely positive, and we've had some really interesting conversations with customers about it.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So each of the different systems or parts of your overall solution, you've obviously decided to either buy, or I'm guessing with some of the services you've developed those services. Where did you get to the point where you went, right, this is what the full solution is going to be? So obviously then you do your due diligence on the different systems to sort of go, do we build HR product, or do we actually just buy one in and actually here's one that we think suits? But how do you come together with the whole complete solution?
It's a great question, and I think we've got quite a lot of educators in the business. So I think when we counted it up, there was a good few hundred years worth of genuine education experience. People who've been in classrooms and or held leadership roles in schools, and we have in the business in product and innovation roles. And it's interesting, those people, some of them have got recent knowledge, some of them maybe a little bit older. They have really clear views on which problems to solve in a school. So I think probably our first iteration of that thinking was guided by our in-house experience. But like everything, as soon as you put stuff in front of customers, you get the, if only it could do this, or if only it could do this, or why haven't you thought about this? And I can probably count 4 or 5 recent integrations or innovations where we've taken customer feedback and we've sort of gone, oh, why didn't we think of that? Because the real world use of your systems is slightly different to the ones that we might think when we're looking at them in a sort of virtual environment. I remember having a conversation with a customer saying, I really want you to integrate forecasting and the HR solutions. And we were kind of like, why would you do? Oh, of course you would want to understand your payroll. And we were just like, we hadn't got there. So we did that, right? And we did it really quickly. And we've now got forecasting tools integrated with our HR tools, which wasn't something we originally had on the roadmap, but we've moved quickly to be able to go and do it. So to answer your question, a mix of what we thought should happen and a heck of a lot of customer feedback as well.
Excellent. I think it'd be really interesting to get your opinion, but I love that our whole approach, that basically it's the full solution rather than, I think there's too many times when people put some product together, normally, from a technical perspective, and go, this is the best product, of course people are going to buy it, and then not think about all the potential services that wrap around that, or even down to what's the experience the customer is going to go through, what's the user journey from the point A to point B, in the sense of that's B is value, A is the point of start, and do you think that's going to be far more? I feel like I've led the question a little bit, but do you feel that that's going to be far more important going forward? Because there's lots of the systems in the back office do look disparate. They do look non-integrated. They don't necessarily provide the full value of what could happen. And do you think that's going to change going forward into the future?
Great question. And I think the conversations I've had with senior trust leaders has been, and I had one literally last week where a lady who's a COO, she said, look, I am going to transform the Trust Central team based on your systems. It sounds slightly grandiose, but we're trying to build an ERP for schools, right? To give schools the sorts of benefits that commercial businesses expect, to be able to understand staff, finances, all the things that make their organizations tick. We're trying to build that at a price point that schools can afford because, commercial ERP systems are incredibly expensive. Now, with that, we have to make some compromises, but the focus has to be on enabling schools to do the core things they need to do as well as possible. So I had this conversation with the COO, and she said, look, we're going to reorganize the trust around your systems. And she said, I get that they're different, right? And I think it's less, or certainly with the feedback we're getting is the UI and the look of those systems is less important than the fact that they talk to each other and that the workflow in the school is then reduced as a result. So, we could spend a huge amount of time and money on getting everything to look the same, but actually, if it doesn't talk to each other properly and deliver the time saving or the insight that the schools need, then it's kind of meaningless. So our focus is very much on understanding those use cases, making sure they're as effective as possible before we get onto the making them look and feel the same. I know that sounds a bit of a kind of cop out, but that's the feedback that we have, and that's sort of what we're responding to. So
yeah. So going back to the sort of they all talk to each other. So I'm not sure. I can't remember actually. You probably do, but are your APIs completely open? And do you think that's where the future will be in the sense of data is easily so ultimately if the schools or MATs have different systems, then all the data can still be accessible and also at the same time reportable to gain those additional insights, especially with AI coming around the corner. I think that's going to be really, really important. So is that where you see the future, or do you see the vision actually people should focus on the partnership that they can get from somewhere like Iris and the value that you can offer in the sense of giving that global view and insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think both philosophical and kind of practical on this as well, on this point, right? This is not our data, it's the school's data. We will have open APIs, and we will not charge for schools to access those APIs or to access the data. I mean, there might be some small cost in terms of creating those APIs and running them, but we're not going to charge for people to have access to their own data. I think that's totally the wrong thing. And I've seen businesses in other sectors do that and not well. And look at the education sector, and we both compete and collaborate with almost everyone in this sector, and I think that's incredibly important because ultimately it's the schools that have to benefit from this, and every school should have the option to choose the best in class bit of technology that they feel fits their purpose, and clearly some will have a slightly different objective than others. I want people to buy Iris software because one, the software is brilliant, and two, the suite talks to each other more effectively than others might do, and that we've genuinely gone and solved real problems in the school with those multiple components. But if a school wants to choose something else and they've made the right reason for that, we will work with that company and we will share data with them, because I think that's how the sector gets better, and we should be winning, as I say, because we've got brilliant software, not because we've tried to lock people into being part of the Iris ecosystem. So there you go. I've said it really clearly. That's how we're going to approach this. That's how we approach it now. So
yeah, it's interesting. I've been asked to do a talk for MATs about procurement, and it's an interesting thing because I think sometimes everybody gets, and in fact that was the reason behind them asking me is because if you look at G Cloud and things, everybody looks a bit like a Me Too in the sense of, oh, I'm going to buy an MIS. What does it do? Behavior, attendance,
yeah.
And actually, one of the things that we constantly talk about with MATs is, think about the partnership you want and the company and the behaviors of that company. Are they going to help you with, can they show you and can they evidence that they can help you with things like your financial concerns or your fiscal concerns? Can they help you with, with sustainability? And so sometimes actually not just thinking about functionality is actually a better, and what's their roadmap, where they're going to go, how are they going to basically support your business. Effectively, a MAT is a business, into the future? You know, how are they going to how are they going to support your children? How are they going to support your teachers? You know, what changes are they going to make? So it's much broader, and it's about more asking the question of suppliers. Do you think that's the right approach, or do you think actually, you know, let's stick with, again, I feel like I'm leading, or do we just stick with functionality and, you know, how we where you know, how easy it to adopt and that sort of thing?
Yeah. And I think back to your question earlier about what's moved in the last 3 years, I think I've definitely seen that mindset change. You know, people were going to buy, I'm going to buy the best thing individually, and then I'm going to buy the next best thing individually. And often in a big map, those two procurements will be led by entirely different directorates. You know, one might be led by HR, one might be led by finance, one might be led by somebody else. And I think that what we're starting to see is, and I guess this plays to kind of the message and the sort of discussions we want to have with the market, is don't just think about where you want to be in the next 3 to 4 years time. Think about where you want to be in the next 5 to 10, because these decisions, you know, going through an IT migration for something as big as finance or you know, MIS or HR, these are big things to do. You don't want to do them on a you know, very regular basis. And the organization you want to partner with needs to have a clear vision of where they're going to be in 5 or 10 years time that's going to align with the trust. So, you know, I think in terms of what your sort of discussions with Matt, I would completely agree. Think about what the end state for your organization looks like and work backwards and procure from there, rather than just, do you do attendance well? Do you do well-being? Because let's face it, everyone does that, right? I mean, you know, if I compare our MISs to all the others, we all do. We're all able to do that stuff. So what differentiates is, I think, as you say, the organization and where we're all going to be in hopefully 5 or 10 years time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think ULT have just come out with a new procurement for 10 years. So I think, you know, I think it is for MIS, and I think you're right. I think my only advice, and obviously they would know better than I, that, you know, they're the map, but you know, my only advice would be, if you're going to go with a company for 10 years just on MIS, think about the wider environment and ecosystem that it's going to be working with, you know, and is there a business that can give you more than just potentially the MIS? I agree with you. I think that's really important. You know, 10 years is a long time. You've got to be
It
really
is. I mean,
with a
yeah.
partnership.
You think what's happened in the education sector in the last 5 years, let alone the last 10, you wouldn't want to be locking yourself in for some, or maybe not locking yourself in is the wrong word. You'd want to have some flexibility to respond to the changes, you know, and they could be political, they could be, you know, technological, of course, or anything else. So I completely agree.
Yeah, it's also only a third of our lives, you know, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit longer for me.
Yeah, a bit longer for me as well. So
oh man. So in relation to, so, you know, I think the market's changing quite a bit, but also technology is moving moving quite fast as well. So, you know, we all know that AI is now probably one of the biggest talking points in EdTech. I think personally, it's a little bit, you know, I always think this with education, and that's probably because we're a bit more conservative sometimes with adoption. But I think AI, you know, AI is here and it's here to stay. It's going to basically revolutionize the industry one way or another. I obviously, I always hope in a positive way for students, and I think it will do. Um, what about your plans from an RS perspective? So, you know, where do you think AI is going to come in and support what you're doing currently? You know, is it from a data science perspective? Because you talked a lot about data, or are you going to utilize it more from a perspective of like generative or automation? Where do you see the future with AI?
I would agree with you. I think there's been a lot of talk about it, and I'd probably say, you know, a lot of talk and not a lot of actual delivery of substance yet. I mean, that's probably unfair to some companies. I'm sure you've done some amazing things, but not enough substance yet. I think there's a lot to be played out on this, and I think Iris as a business, you know, our engineering community across all of our divisions is over 600 strong. There's a lot of focus at a group level going into how best to use AI for the sectors, and the same is absolutely true of education. But I think it has potentially unique benefits for us in our strategy, and I'll explain why. So one of the things that's really has been a driving force behind our strategy is, as I mentioned earlier, is when you have all of the back office capability, the data that sits in those systems, whether it's attendance registers or you know, sign-in registers, through to how much you're spending on school meals, through to your staff training, all these things. This data sits in different systems in the school. Well, with the Iris portfolio, you have access to all of that data, and therefore being able to surface some of the insights that sit within that data, being able to identify students who might be struggling with attendance or have some other influence around them, being able to identify that in advance and enable leadership teams and teachers to take preemptive action with that student to try and help them, or identifying where resources aren't best used within the school. Anything. When you've got all that information, you really can answer some questions that you can't do when that information sits in silos. But the problem is you've got so much information at that point. Where do you go to look for it, and how do you surface it? And I know many schools are going through building data lakes and hiring data science and all the rest of it. We've built some products in the form of Iris Central, which makes that much easier and helps schools really interrogate that data in a really simple and easy to understand format. And I think our first application of AI will be, how do you interrogate and find genuine insight into those pools of data? So things like natural language ability to type into a report and say, how many students were in attendance in these 2 schools yesterday, and then the AI will generate a report for that, rather than you having to be a semi-expert in Excel or Power BI or whatever it is. So I think that those things, being able to interrogate vast sums of data, I think lends us to our strategy, and we're focused on that. There is also the time-saving element. So how do you help, which I think is much easier and more understood. Everyone can use ChatGPT. How do you write a letter better? How do you prompt? How do you do the sort of ChatGPT type things? Much easier to embed, and we've seen a few examples of that. I think we'll do a bit of that as well. But I also think there's use cases we haven't even scratched on yet, which we will get to. But as a business, we are very much focused on genuine things that will provide benefit, rather than shiny AI that has probably got questionable value in the real world.
I agree. I think it's quite interesting. I think people want to stick that label of AI on their products as quickly as they possibly can, and sometimes you sort of go, is it true AI, or as you say, actually, is it a utilization of AI that actually adds any form of benefit, and does it solve a problem? If it doesn't solve a problem, it probably is just for the marketing purposes rather than
Exactly.
for the person or the user.
Yeah.
I think there's this one place which I think is going to be quite interesting. I think AI can naturally allow the bleeding between the sort of back office and the learning space as well. I think that's going to be quite interesting, and I'd be interested to get your opinion on. There's lots of information, as you said, in the back office. Lots of information about children. Even down to even their style of learning. If you really look at the future of AI, there's even the whole scraping of data from things like social media and all kinds of stuff, which again can help with forming how that child can be educated and getting to the point of real, true, individualized learning. Do you think that's as far as it will go? And do you think you'll go that far, in fact, in the RS, and then basically inform the learning, that actually you may want to educate the child in this particular way? Here's some plans that you potentially might want to look at, and sort of, do you think you'll inform the sort of learning space, or do you think you're going to hold back because actually the learning space is not for RS, it's more back office, so you're going to try and restrain that strategy?
Our objective is to improve the outcomes for students, and I think if we, as you say, there is a huge amount of data in the back office that, when interrogated in the right way, can absolutely help the learning environment be better, be more tailored to the student, and ultimately improve the student's chances of doing well. We absolutely will work with companies to help do that. As I say, for open APIs, we will share that data in a collaborative way. We don't have any kind of learning tools, very slightly, but not a huge amount of front office tools. But yeah, we would work with organizations to be able to do that. I think, as I said earlier, we haven't even scratched the surface of some of these use cases. I think as we learn more about how this data plugs together and how you gather genuine insight, there will be exactly things like you described. ways to shape that learning environment and improve student outcomes. And yeah, quite excited to see where all that's going to go. So yeah, very, very interesting.
So one more question about the future piece, really, and this is gonna be quite, I think, be interesting to get. It's, do you know, it's only come up recently by a couple of people. Brett from People Progress and so on have been commenting on it, and that is actually, and maybe this falls more into your favour. You know, the MIS, and MIS is big. It's a megalith, and to be honest with you, that's probably, if we're being honest, it was probably because there has been one system for a very long time that it's just been built out and built out and built out. Do you think we'll get back to more of a, actually there's this behavior system which is, you know, best of, you know, I know it's an old term, but best of breed of behavior. Actually, let's plug that in. Actually, there's a great attendance tool over here that should be plugged in. Do you think the MIS will actually be more broken up, and or do you think it will still stay in its form that it is? Because basically it's probably a cheaper option if you basically buy it in its totality.
That's a really interesting question, and I think there's different needs for different schools. I mean, if you're a single school or a very small multi-academy trust, then there are tools within the MIS. You know, you probably want a kind of you probably want some of your HR and contract information for your staff in the MIS. You probably can do a bit of engagement, you know, through the MIS. You can kind of have that all together. I think once you get to a certain size, and this is what we found from customers, you immediately run into the limitations of trying to do everything in one system. And I think that absolutely has played to our strategy. I mean, most of the customers who are procuring our HR and payroll systems have either been in receipt of HR and payroll support from the local authority, and it's, you know, it's been challenging, and they need to move away, either because it's not responsive enough or doesn't give them the insight they need, or they've been trying to use the HR systems within the MIS and have just run into, you know, the kind of limitations of a system that's not designed to do HR. So and then, you know, we've been obviously working with both our own MIS and other MISs to do integrations so that you can pass information across, be it cover management or, you know, basic staff information. You actually don't need a huge amount of staff information in an MIS. So yeah, we've been talking to customers to be able to use a proper grown-up education HR system so they can manage, as I said earlier, you know, all of the aspects of employees and teachers that you need to do in a big grown-up multi-academy trust. So I think as the trust, to answer your question, as the trusts get bigger, I think having interconnected systems that we know are best in class in those areas is going to be a much more effective way to build a future technology strategy than trying to shoehorn everything into one system, which inevitably will run out of its limitations. That said, there are bits of the MIS which we're never going to try and do in any other system. I mean, attendance, curriculum, you know, all that kind of thing is absolutely best done in the MIS, and that you know, it should focus on those things, I think.
Yeah, that's a great answer. There's something you've used quite a bit, the sort of language of grown up system, and I think that's quite interesting because I agree. We've said it for a long time. Multi-academy trusts are multi-million-pound businesses in lots of cases, and you sort of go, you don't want to be using sort of I'm not going to. I was going to use a very disparaging term, but I won't. You don't want to be using basic systems that don't meet your needs. You know, you do need to have a tech sort of strategy where you get the best systems for your MAT or for your schools, and I think that's fundamentally important because ultimately, otherwise, what you'll be doing is doing still lots of manual, manual processes, and ultimately, you're not going to get the efficiencies that you need out of a multi-million-pound business. Is that what you mean by a grown-up system, or is it something else?
You've hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you take the average, you know, secondary school in the UK in a small town, it will probably be the largest sort of business in the town. I mean, you know, it's an easy multi-million-pound budget with, you know, hundreds of employees. No commercial enterprise would try and run an organization of that size on some of the tools that we've seen schools trying to use in the past. And I think one of the things that struck me when I came into this sector is you have a conversation with many CFOs and COOs. They have experience from large private sector organizations. Many big four accountants are CFOs in multi-academy trusts, and I think some of them have taken a look at the tools that they had in the past and gone, this just isn't good enough, right? And we need to improve. And I think that is the need that we are responding to. If you are going to need to manage, tens, in some cases, huge budgets, as you say, you need the right systems to be able to do that with confidence, and get the best out of your organization. And that's the need we're responding to. We aren't, I'm not going to paint a picture that we're nirvana by any stretch of the imagination. That is a journey that we are going on as well. We're trying to deliver as much of that functionality and insight as we can at a price point that schools can afford. And I think the sector deserves those sorts of tools to be able to do the best it can.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting because we don't like to call Matt's businesses, and rightly so. They're basically the main focus is always going to be about the children, and that that's a much more that's a greater sort of vision and strategy to have. But ultimately they do need to see themselves, I think, sometimes as these big businesses, and with the power of that as well. And they should be asking for more than they're probably getting sometimes.
Well, our customers have no problem in asking for more from us, and rightly so, and we're here to support it. But I certainly don't see customers being afraid to ask for more. So yeah, we're happy to try and live up to that.
So my last question, and I know this is going to you're going to go to your strengths, but if there were, say, 5 questions you wanted Mats or people to ask when they were looking to procure their solutions, what sort of things do you think you would like them to ask? So I know it's going to play into your favor and into your strengths, but actually most of the questions I think are all about making sure that people ask the right questions. Yeah, you may feel that you meet those needs better, but I think you'll probably, if the Mats did ask those questions, they probably still also would be able to compare and make sure they get the right sort of solution for their needs. What do you think are the most important things?
Not in priority order, but I think that, and we touched on many of them through the course of this conversation, but I think the first one is, if you are going to go to procurement, be really clear on what your future organizational setup needs to look like. And I don't mean just for the finance team and just for the HR team and just for teaching staff. I mean, as an organization, what is it you're trying to get to, and work backwards from that and procure the things that are going to support that journey. Hope Iris, of course, would be part of the running for that. That's the strategy that we're trying to play to. But the trusts that I think are gaining the most benefit are thinking in that way. And as I said earlier, speak to people who've been reorganizing their teams around those systems, will deliver real world benefits for organizations. So I think that's part of it. I think the second part, and I think trusts are already on this page, but it's how they deal with it, is how do you use data to make better decisions? I think we're literally scratching the surface of trust starting to understand the millions of data points that get created on a daily basis across schools, and how do you derive genuine insight to help students improve as a result of that. So I think data and data usage has to be a really key part of that strategy. The third bit I would probably touch on is around culture and people, and I think, well, and then there's 2 aspects to that. One is, are the tools and the equipment that you're providing your staff genuinely going to help your staff work better in the day? Do you have good mobile apps? Can they access this stuff from home so they're not locked in the office on a daily basis? Is that stuff easy to use? Is it modern? Is it cloud? Those sorts of tools I think are important. And equally, are people and culture from the organization you're buying from. I mean, these are huge buying decisions. I mean, nobody buys enterprise grade technology without being really confident, I hope, that the organization you're working with is going to be absolutely behind you. And if things go wrong, and let's be honest, when you do technology changes like this, things do go wrong, you've got an organization that's going to stand next to you and try and fix it. And I think that's incredibly important, especially as those trusts are. I mean, you look at what trusts are dealing with. They've got budget pressures. Many of them are growing at the same time. They've got staffing challenges. I mean, those things are difficult enough in themselves, let alone having to run a pretty significant change program for technology at the same time. So make sure you choose an organisation that's going to stand behind you or stand next to you, I should say, in order to support that change, I think is incredibly important. And that probably leads to maybe my fourth point. I know you said five, but probably four, is that is the organisation that you're engaging with in order to do this, have they got the resources and the desire to be here for the longer term? And I think that certainly does play to Iris's strengths. We are big enough and committed enough to be here for the long term. And as I said, we're on only partially into the journey of our strategy for education. So yeah, we're looking forward to helping customers realize those visions a long time into the future.
Excellent. I agree. I think I've written some of those down because I thought actually that's what I might use some of those for when I go talk to the Mats. But I think the other one is I think I would be interested in understanding your roadmap and does it align to my roadmap as a Matt as well, which I think well, all fairness you did say about with the vision. So, but I think that's going to be really, really important.
Yeah, and roadmap. I mean, the amount of customers that do ask us for a roadmap, and rightly so. And I know you're an ex-product product leader, Nick, so you'll know this even better than me. But near-term roadmaps are pretty clear because you've committed resources to it. The further out you get, the more flexibility you've got, and that's both good and bad because clearly customers who want stuff in the future, you can direct resources towards it. Equally, not everyone might want that thing and might have wanted something else. So managing those conflicts is a constant challenge with software businesses. But I hope we listen to the mass of our customers and do respond appropriately.
Oh, and my personal view on roadmaps has always been, it's all objective based. I don't think any company should ever really set out these are the features, not until it's like 6 months, within delivery, because like you say, it's about meeting expectations. But I think the idea is sort of going, actually AI is fundamental to our product strategy or our business strategy. I think that's going to be quite important. Those objectives, that sort of level, I think are important for everybody.
Absolutely.
Amazing talking to Simon, and thank you very much for coming on board. I know you're a really busy person, especially with the portfolio you have. So I appreciate you probably have a very, very strong team behind you. But
I've got a wonderful team who do an amazing job. Yes. Well, Nick, as I say, I've watched many of these that you've done with other people far more experienced and influential in the education market than me. I watched a number of them, so to have been invited on is a real honour. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, and yeah, look forward to speaking to you again. I'm sure in the not too distant future.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. And absolutely, let's keep talking. It'd be interesting to see. Maybe we should do one in a short term to see whereabouts the market's changed or not.
Yeah, it'd be nice to look back at this, wouldn't it, in a 12 or 18 months time and see whether we were right or wrong. So yeah, it'd be very interesting. And I know we didn't touch on it, but it'll be very interesting to see which direction the Labour government goes down. I mean, and if they are able to bring additional teachers into the sector, that can only be a really good thing. And I think for us, that's really good because we've invested in HR to help teachers and schools do that. I mean, it's tough to do, right? It's easy to say and really hard to do. And whether the VAT increases will be used to fund that or not, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, but maybe we do this again in 12 or 18 months' time and see what's actually changed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it'd be really interesting to see if the Labour policies have had any additional or any more influence over what happens within the marketplace itself. And so on. I think it'd be interesting to, again, but regarding retention, maybe at some point it'd be good to see, regarding your services, is there more of a positive retention in schools or Mats than others? That'd be it'd be quite interesting to see.
I've asked that question of the team quite a bit, and I think it's probably a bit early days to be able to do that. But could we demonstrate that the Iris software, gives Mats, improved in the outcomes? And I think it's a bit subjective, and B, it's probably too early to tell for some of that stuff. But yeah, it'd be lovely to draw some of those correlations if we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Again, a big, massive thank you for your time, and I'll see you soon.
All right, take care. Thanks, Nick.